Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April 2024 integration down under. And so we'll go through our organizers real quick. We've got Martin, we've got Dan, we've got Mick and Wagner, and myself in Melbourne. And tonight we have one of the product group people, Harold Campos from the with Logic Apps. So basically, and he's going to be talking about mainframes and mid-range. One thing most people don't know about me, even though my title is BizTalk Bill, I started back in, what was it, about 1983. My first commercial job was a COBOL programmer on a mainframe. And my university was all mainframe programming. So COBOL, PL1, all of those nice mainframe languages. And then I spent 10 years at the US government doing mainframe systems programming. And that's what brought me to Australia the first time back in the late 80s, early 90s. And the rest of that story was a scuba diving club where I met my wife. But we will go ahead and get started with the talk tonight. So let me hand over to Harold and remove my slide deck, add him to there, and it's over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. And then, one of the things that it's very curious, right? Because I've been working with in the in this space, in the mainframe and mid-range integration space for I think it's going to be almost 17 years now. And it all started by chance because someone asked me, "Can you do some work on host integration server?" Right? And I said, "Sure, why not?" Right? I mean, what is it? and and I took the work, and then from there um, it was a very close relationship that I had with the product group, and then we started working around the world, different engagements, and that's gonna take me to the content that I will present. Why mainframes and mid ranges? Um, you know, Mainframes and mid ranges. I think there is a common misconception. They they are servers, right? I think I've heard a lot of professionals talking about mainframes and mid ranges as if they were speaking about servers, and they are not really servers. They are really ecosystems, and they have been around for a while, right? Well, the first picture is not about. It's just funny, but it's not about a mainframe, right? I think it's from a nuclear submarine. I can't remember what it was, but the other ones are. And it has been growing. It has been growing. It was pervasive. Everybody was using a mainframe. I think at some point the there were the um, number of lines of code and written in the SNA protocol was just so pervasive that it was probably 70 to 80% of all of the workloads that were running around the world were using the SNA protocol. So then, as such, you know, the there is a huge number of applications that are still running, even though despite that they have been migrated to something else, right? Not necessarily to the cloud, but to something else. A great portion of them, there are still a lot of mission critical applications that are running in this legacy technology, right, in these environments. So let's start making a distinction between what mainframes and mid-ranges are, because there are two schools of thought. There is one that says that there is only mainframes, and there is another one that says there are mainframes and mid-ranges. Um, yeah, if you see all of these servers here, you have the IBM Z, the Unisys ClearPath, and then Power Systems from IBM, Sun Spark, Fujitsu Spark, and Superdome. The first couple of them, they are mainframes, and I think towards the end of 2022, BMC ran a mainframe survey report, and they captured that the growth in mainframe environments isn't really slowing down. Um, 55% of the respondents report that more than half of their data is on the mainframe. Expect to increase the number of MIPS, the the processing unit that they have on mainframes to increase in the next 12 months. And what we are seeing is that, customers who are traditionally running mainframes, um, they continue using them, and in some cases, I think the largest ones, the largest mainframe customers, they have they continue growing on the mainframe. Probably not as fast as they did back in the day, right? But they continue leveraging the mainframe. They continue looking for ways to do CI/CD, to integrate with GitHub, to do different ways of integration. So then these environments are fairly relevant, and well, very relevant actually, and that's why on a mainframe. So if we get to the details of, we try to explore what runs on a mainframe. So let's still drill down a little bit on it, right? So a mainframe has a number of internal facilities, we call them, right, that support the way how we present the information, the networking, the transaction managers, database and files, and core facilities, right? I think to integrate with a mainframe, there is also another misconception, which is that we just call a REST API or REST service, and then we're done. We integrate with the mainframe. But then when we attempt to integrate with the mainframe, sometimes they, they get brought back to reality, and then they realize that REST was not pervasive. It was not very common back in the day. So then doing anything that is important on a mainframe requires some additional level of expertise or preparation or configuration that has to be in place. So I think now that's the part of dealing with mainframes that is interesting. But also there is the other part, which is what can mainframes do today? Like, for instance, the IBM Z16 mainframe can process 300 billion inference requests per day, just with just 1 millisecond of latency. So as they are sort of supercomputers, so then um, one would expect that they will do a lot of things. So they actually do, right? The largest airlines, they use mainframes. They mostly use this customized version of this optimized version of the operating system. Uh, CTVF, for instance, is used in Visa, is used in the airlines. It's for transaction processing. It's optimized for extreme volume concurrency and fast response. IMS, one of the core commercial systems available in mainframes, manages over 20 petabytes of production data in servers and serves over 300 million users per day. And this is a very old system, right? This was born in 1966, right? And yeah, most of the Fortune 1000 use them, and it's older than CICS. CICS came back a few years later as a terminal manager, and then it grew to what it is today, right? You can speak about 5 nines of availability, right? And but there is something interesting, right? That I think, at least it used to be like that. IBM required hardware to be a generation N-2, forcing mandatory hardware upgrades. So in other words, you have to be continuously upgrading, and I guess that was part of the commercial model, right? Of it of this environment. I, for instance, what runs on a ZTPF mainframe? So flight operation business systems, systems that are really mission critical. So you are not talking about, just a system that queries the data and shows something for you to action. No, they do very complex stuff. Most of the complex stuff, some of the complex stuff that we have, and we deal with, it's running on a mainframe, right? And yes, in many cases still looks like that, right? Despite the fact that they provide different ways to present the information these days. A journey that began 30 years ago. Uh, Microsoft has been integrating with mainframes for more than actually since 1990. There was a product called Microsoft, I think it was DCA, and originally meant to provide the SNA protocol um, support to integrate with networking, because in the end, the first thing that you do is you have to figure out the networking that you need to work with to use the APIs or the libraries that will get you to do something in this distributed environment, right? So then the SNA protocol, which is the predecessor of the TCP/IP protocol, um, was pervasive, as I said minutes ago, right? So then we released our first product that provided integration with IBM host systems in 1993 as an SNA gateway. And this is, I think this is a picture of the SNA server, which came a bit later, right? Because I didn't find the logo. I wasn't able to find the logo of that particular product. But then the scope of the product grew to include additional SNA features, TN3270, SNA print server, access to IBM data stores like such as DB2, VSAM, Informix, and IBM's transaction systems later, and then messaging such as MQ series to the IBM MQ, and then it was added TCP/IP support with no SNA dependencies, which to me was a milestone, right? Because that's what is taking us to the presentation today as well, right? And I'll talk. I'll briefly explain why this is important, and then the Azure Logic App Service providers. So one thing to consider here is that, as I said, so um, in the past, the the protocol, and I haven't added material here about it to talk about SNA, but I can definitely speak about the major difference between SNA and TCP/IP. SNA has a split stack architecture, right? So it's like a client server. So you offload some work to the client, and the rest of the work is done by the server as a protocol. And our stack was written using unmanaged code, right? Back in the day, everything was written using C, C++, and so so then and it requires a highly coupled environment. So if we were to move SNA to bring SNA support to the cloud, so then we'll be breaking a few patterns, right? But I think we gotta be conscious of the environment, which is a different environment, the distributed environment across networks, across the internet. It's not as reliable as the environment that you're running locally on a closed environment, right? On enterprise, on a data center. So that's why we didn't think about incorporating SNA support to Azure, not yet at least, right? And that leaves us with running all of these great integration capabilities, bring them to the cloud using Azure Logic Apps, but with TCP/IP, right? So and that takes us to the concept that we have at Microsoft of a mainframe integration platform as a service, or a legacy integration platform as a service. We call it internally mainframe integration platform as a service. And then we built this concept where we asked, okay, so if we were to integrate with mainframes, because we know that there is some complexity in dealing with mainframes, how would we do it, right? What would we need? Um, we have a strong data offering, right? And I think, and we continue working on data with all of the database products that we offer, the SKUs that we offer, right? And but the SQL team and the data team, well, the data teams, which is pretty much the SQL team and the Cosmos team, but mostly the SQL team in Microsoft, um, works with us. They work with us a lot to access this legacy environment. So we have this strong collaboration with the SQL team to do this integration at the data level. So then we decided to, from a cloud perspective, we decided to incorporate these Mainframe and Midranges integration capabilities into Azure Logic Apps. And the way how we did is we added these um, connectors, these built-in or in-app connectors that will run in Logic Apps standard, that will allow customers to run these different workloads as they were in the past in the mainframe and mid-ranges, while preserving these workloads while integrating with a new platform uh, with workflows and such. Um, but not only that, right? Because that is the underlying way to connect and then to execute, to do stuff in the mainframe and in the mid-range. But also, there is an aspect to it which is uh, probably overlooked, which is dealing with the metadata, right? So how do we deal with the metadata that is required to integrate with these environments? And this is where it gets interesting, because um, um, uh, interacting with programs in the host requires you to have some sort of contract, right? In this case, this contract is provided by what we call COBOL copybooks. I'm gonna get to the detail of it in a few minutes, and also that's when we are integrating with what we call APPCI-like transactions, or transactions that don't really use screens, right? They use a subset or of the SNA protocol that allows them to just do interaction via remote program invocation, and also the part where, okay, so what if I need to integrate with screens-based systems, right? For that, TN3270 is the protocol, and TN3270 is the protocol that for screens and for accessing and interacting with the screens, and that brought us to create this design tool that we call the Microsoft 3270 design tool. So then we have two designers, in other words. So these two designers, one allows you to prepare, to create these definitions of metadata to integrate with programs in the host, and the other one allows you to record the screens, a sequence of screens and actions, and enter parameters and values, and navigation and all of that. So then you can wrap this metadata and then execute it in an RPA fashion, an RPA manner from the cloud. So then the offer that we have allows you to manipulate the metadata, which I said that it was overlooked, because this tends to be, if you, in the absence of a product like this tends to be the most complex part of dealing with this mainframe and midranges integration, right? And IBM has a product that does that is called Z-Connect, that does something from the mainframe, right? And I think what they do is fairly similar to what we do to some degree, because they also have a component that requires a copybook member and such, right? But that work has to be done on the mainframe, and that has its own requirements on the mainframe. So for customers who are looking to grow in Azure and to abstract from the complexity of going and dealing and enabling these complex environments in the host, so then that's when it makes more sense to just focus the resources in the cloud. Um, okay. So how different are mainframe programs? What you see on a mainframe, in this particular case, this is a COBOL program that is running in IMS, right? For IMS. This is what you see on a mainframe, and this is what you need, right? This is what we provide, right? So this is the difference um, between using something like the Logic Apps connectors and Logic Apps and our designers, right, as opposed to just doing code from scratch or using other tools, right? So the as I mentioned at the beginning, some of the core capabilities of the product, um, the connectors that we have in Logic Apps, have been incorporated from host integration servers. So then one of them is called Transaction Integrator, that allowed us in the past to do this work of um, understanding the copybooks and the metadata definitions, and and incorporate it into assemblies, right? So then you created an assembly that reflected what you had on a mainframe on mid-range program, and with that, then you were able to just use that as a mirror, so to speak, right, with the underlying protocol or networking connectivity. So then you were able to just call the program and execute it, right? So then we took that capability, transaction integrator, and we offloaded we took the development aspect of it, um, and then we create a designer for it, right? So then that's what we call the HIS designer for logic apps. So we took all of the development part of the transaction integrator and we incorporated it into Visual Studio as a standalone component, so then you can just download it and then get installed on Visual Studio, and then you can use it to do the metadata design, right? So in the past, you were required to install host integration server, right? The development components. You don't have to do that today, and so with that, then a few of the things, just to show a few of the things that you can do with a designer, right? You can create the structures, you can define parameters, you can define um, data value definition, data value tables or definition value tables, which allows you to create conditional expressions. So you can do a lot of things with this tool, just starting from the COBOL copybook. And then you will wonder, why will I want to do that, right? So whenever you want to integrate with these legacy systems, uh, when you see on a demo, it's just a couple of parameters and then one response back coming from a transaction program. But in fact, you can receive 100 of those with nested fields, and so they can be very complex, right? And that tool or this tool simplifies the work um, of doing exactly that part, the metadata management. And I think that is, if you ask me, beyond the connectivity and beyond all of the great things that it does by to call these remote programs on mainframes and mid-ranges, it it actually provides a huge value just by allowing you to manipulate the metadata in a visual manner. Okay, you can create schemas and DVTs, as I said, right? And these DVTs you can define, depending on a member, then it will have one branch, or another member, another branch, right? So all of these um, possibilities. This is for manipulating host files such as VSAM files, right? Sample mapping, sample.vsam.eses.file is the host file name. So you have a local name, you have the host file name, and you have a schema, and that schema will have all of the structure, right? That using the host data types and the .NET types, right? String, short, integer, and a union that has COBOL redefines, and this COBOL redefines, which is basically a way to just alternate the data, or create branching of structures, right? Redefining the a specific space in memory to something else, so you can create complex discriminant values for it, right? So anyway, so this is some of the things that you can do with the HIS designer for logic apps. And then you say, okay, you know what? After I've done that work, then what happens, right? After you have completed the mapping of your metadata program, right? What you end up doing is you create what is called an HIDX file, or a host integration definition XML file. That basically what it does, it's an XML file that stores all of the metadata work that you have done, right? And you can use it with the CICS connector, with the IMS connector, and the host files parser, right? And then with host integration server. So then, in the case of Logic Apps, in Logic Apps standard, you're gonna take that HIDX file and you're gonna upload it into the maps artifacts, right? And then you see I have a number of them. So then you can use them from your Logic App workflow. And that takes me to the next tool, which is the 3270 design tool, which I think is very cool. It's a very cool tool that allows you to run mainframe screens in Logic Apps. Or this is also a tool that was not built for Logic Apps, but was then customized to some degree for it. But this tool allows you to, as I said at the beginning, to wrap to wrap a number of screens, right, and create a navigation plan, and then recognize values, and then create methods, and then execute them as if you were running on the screen. Now, is this is a tool for customers who are looking to preserve the screens. They don't want to make change to the screens, or they know they're comfortable with the governance of their screen-based applications, and so then they can do RPA. They can bring that execution to the cloud, right? If you make a change in the screen, so then you gotta make a change in the program. So that means that you have to be always on top of this, um, of these definitions. So what's going to happen is that when you do this, you will create a recording file with RAP extension, RAP extension, and it will also create an HIDX file. The RAP extension is just a recording file that you use to see the definitions and to see the sequence and everything, right? But the actual HIDX file is the one that you will be using in Logic Apps for the IBM 3270 connector, right? So I have a number of videos on this topic and how to use the design and how to set it up. It will take a lot of time to just include a demonstration of just that particular component. So I invite you to go to my channel and then take a look to the 3270 design tool video. So then I've been talking about connectors, about history on mainframes and mid-ranges. But so what are the actual connectors that we have for mainframes and mid-ranges? We have a connector for IBM MQ. And yes, IBM MQ doesn't only runs on or run on mainframes, but it runs on mainframes a lot, right? And we created our own client um, uh, many years ago, right? So this is not the IBM MQ client. This is our own, the Microsoft MQ client. So um, and this client has been in use in BizTalk server, uh, with host integration server, now with Logic Apps, right? And it supports MQ 9.3 right now, right? And it has I think the latest capability that we have brought to the IBM MQ connector was the browse lock or the pick lock. Um, and but we continuously add capabilities to our MQ connector, looking for improving performance always, because I think the goal of having this uh, our own client was to, well, one, to have more control on less dependency on third-party versioning, right, and stuff, but also to be able to optimize it to make it faster to some degree, right, in some specific scenarios. Those were the reasons, right? So we have our own client, and then we have an offline parser. Why an offline parser? So what is the IBM host files offline parser? So this, and I'll show you in the portal in a few minutes. The IBM host files offline parser. At the beginning, we thought, okay, let's add a connector to go and grab host files, to from the mainframe, parse them and such. But the challenge of accessing vSAN files or IBM host files on a mainframe, um, it's tough. It's not as easy as one would think, with in the absence of appliances or additional software to install on the mainframe. So there are customers that have fantastic solutions to do these um, host files management, data replication solutions, right? But in many cases, or in most of the cases, they are required to install something additional on the mainframe, or an appliance external to the mainframe that requires a component on the mainframe. So there is some coupling, right? Some investment that you have to do to access these files, and that's exactly one of the things that we're trying to avoid with our customers. So we have stayed away from shipping software for ZOS since the very beginning, right? So we don't ship products for IBM Z, right? So that's why we decided, while in host integration server we had a managed files. We have a managed files provider for host files that uses the DFM facility in uh, in the mainframe. Um, the challenge with these libraries are that they depend on the DFM, and the DFM puts a higher priority to the locally executed transactions, for instance, the CICS transactions, right? So then, and that's the way how it was designed back in the day, right? So it assigns a higher priority to the local calls rather than the distribute calls. That makes these distribute calls um, um, not error prone, but not as reliable as the locally executed transaction. So then that means that for customers, we always advise them to, if they have to do some work with vSAN files or local files, and then they do that through a local program, right? And then we just call the program, and then we make things simpler. But we have this provider, these libraries that allows us to do CRUD operations with host files using the DFM in the mainframe, which is a core system in the mainframe. So nothing to install, just enable. And but but then we thought about bringing that up to the cloud, but that requires the SNA stack. So then that will require for us to just create the SNA um, feature or add the SNA capabilities to the cloud. And when I keep talking about adding SNA to the cloud, so you can run host integration server on a virtual machine with the SNA gateway, and that will do the work, right? So in the cloud, but that's a VM, so you will have to go through the VM and then go back, right? So when I say not bringing SNA to the cloud, I'm talking about not not bringing the SNA protocol or architecture to actually logic apps, to running logic apps, right? So that you can kick off um, an SNA request from a logic apps workflow, right? Because we will need also something like a DTC coordinator that we don't have today. So then it will become a bit more complex. But anyway, so then as we don't have that SNA support in the cloud, so we could not bring the managed host files provided. So then we said, oh, you know what? What's the next thing that we can provide? It is a parser, you know. So then we have these action that allows you to generate and to parse host files content, right? So then we leave the customer the responsibility of moving the data to the cloud via FTP, via any other mechanism available, appliance, move it to a storage account, or as I said, an FTP, because we have an FTP connector, right? We can read it with an FTP, and actually that's something that I do very often. I read data using FTP. The FTP connector from the host, and then I parse it with the parser from host files, and then I send it back. You know, then we have the very well-known IBM DB2 connector, right, to interact with DB2 systems. That has been around for a while with BizTalk server, host integration server, now with Logic Apps. Same for CICS. We can interact with CICS systems in different manners. We can call CICS web services. We could call we can go directly to using TCP/IP to the program, right? In different manners. We have different programming models for such. They are available in the docs. IBM 3270 that allows you to integrate with the screens, IBM IMS to integrate with IMS systems using IMS Connect, right? And then IBM I to integrate with IBM I systems, formerly A400/A series. So why then logic apps for mainframe and mid-ranges modernization out of all of the alternatives and options that we have for integration, because there are many tools in the market, right? So okay, so if you are running in our cloud, if you plan to run in the Azure cloud, so then your best solution is to use logic apps. Um, because of all of the things as I explained in the last 30 minutes, and also because it gives you the ability to integrate with other technologies and connectors. So because this is the integrator, right? The iPaaS platform. So then it's not just focused on the mainframe, right? Clearly, we have the strong offerings for all kinds of technologies, right? And that keeps growing and keeps getting um, um, growing in number of features as well. So then, if to that you add all of these mainframe and mid-ranges integration capabilities, so then your workflow will allow you to not only run with all of this stack, but also to integrate if you want to use the SNA stack, which is more legacy, so then you can do a lot of things, right, together. For instance, integrating with ATMs or terminals, right? Some of the or printers, right? I think some of uh, when I have conversations with customers, they ask questions about moving to logic apps, right, and to integrate. I think the discussions um, are interesting because in many cases customers, they are not using SNA, they are not no longer relying on SNA, so then moving to use these technologies is much easier, right? But if they are using SNA, so then they have to make some adaptations, in the mainframe, or they have to use host integration server, and then we can have workflows speaking with host integration server. Um, Also, we, as I said, meeting today's customer needs with Logic Apps and host integration server, well, we also can meet them where they are headed, right? We have great partners that do fantastic work on the mainframe modernization space, and if they behave like mainframes, for backward compatibility, so then when that happens, we integrate with them successfully, and with for those who do lift and shift, but for those who do code conversion, it's pretty much the same thing, right? So um, all of these great partners that we have, they allow us to, we interact with them, right? And we give them the ability um, to use our products to interact to this hybrid scenario. Sometimes you migrate some components of the mainframe and you let the other part of the mainframe running. So then you need the integration tool, right? So that's where Logic Apps come to play. I think what is one of the so if to answer the question why Logic Apps for mainframe and mid-ranges integration, I'm just gonna call out a few of the benefits because there are many more, but I think probably the most relevant ones are the first one provides a cloud native approach to deal with complexity of converting from FCDIC to ASCII, dealing with mainframe data types, invoking transactions, and parsing 3270. When I say cloud native approach, it is really baked in the engine, in the Logic Apps engine. So then um, this is not an approach of let's call an API that calls an API that calls another API. No, this is um, we have this in the engine. So then our solution is fast, um, is very fast to do this work because let's remember um, that the core technologies have been around for a while, 20 to 30 years, between 20 to 30 years. So then we have customers who are running, same core code base on premises. We have had them running for a while, uh, and it has this technologies are mature technologies. So that's why having these incorporated into the engine that makes it more um, that makes it faster and reliable. So there is no dependency on third-party libraries, being significant cost savings compared to other solutions. No licensing required as such, right? So we are not going to ask you to pay something additional for these connectors if you are running in Logic Apps standard, right? Because all of this will fall under the compute. If you are running consumption or so then that would probably be a different story, right? No licensing charges either, right? But you will have to follow the calculator model where you have execution based or cost based in number of calls to transaction. Not well, no licensing anyway, right? So in any case, Azure Logic Apps connectors provide direct TCP/IP communication to mainframes and mid-ranges. Host integration server extends Logic Apps to support the SNA architecture. You, you have to set up as if you need SNA, you have to set up an SNA gateway on a virtual machine and cloud, and then have Logic Apps calling a service exposed in the SNA gateway because we don't really have a way to, as I said, we have not incorporated the SNA stack in Logic Apps. And finally, and this is a benefit of any workflow in Logic Apps, right? Easily provides REST capabilities for mainframes and midranges by exposing Logic Apps workflows as REST APIs. So as I mentioned at some point, um, imagine a workflow where you have all of these connectors, that connect to different facilities, right, on a mainframe, right? So you can do pretty much the whole work of integrating just using low code, and believe me, dealing with these data types is it can be very complex. So that's why we try to avoid it whatsoever. I have been speaking for a while, so let me just see if I can present something here. So what I'm going to show you real quick is um, the designer, right, that I was just talking about, and also the connectors. So let me open the portal, right? Okay, so this is let me show you one workflow that I have that uses all of these connectors, right? So what I did in this workflow is I created ahead of time all of these um, actions with the connectors that we have available for Mainframe and Midranges integration, right? The latest addition to the team of connectors of IBM integration connectors is a called IBM I program, right? So this is we didn't speak a lot about IBMI, but now I'm remembering that I mentioned that there is a difference between mid-ranges and two schools of thoughts between mainframes and mid-ranges, but I didn't say what was the difference, right? Um, when I think it was probably between 40 to 50 years ago, right? IBM decided to release a smaller type of mainframe system, um, a most cost-effective solution for smaller organizations, right? And that's exactly the way how they put it, right? That was similar to a mainframe, right? But not as expensive or as big, right? Most cost-effective, right? But yet powerful enough to cover all of these mission-critical workloads from back in the day, and that's how ACE400 was born. Can't remember if there was a predecessor for ACE 400. I think it was ACE 400, but or ACE 400. And with that also there was what the language that was mostly used for ACE 400 or ACE 400 was the RPG, the Report Program Generator language, RPG language that allows you to it's somewhat similar to COBOL, right? Um, but not as famous as COBOL. So that's why today many customers are still running RPG, and we support RPG, right? So our designer, the designer that I'm going to show you right now, when I install the designer, so it's going to give me the ability to create host application projects or host files projects, right? As the ones that I shown in the presentation, right? And then what I do is I go to either create a client or a service definition. We call it .NET client or service definition. For the connectors, we always use the .NET client definition because it's what we used to call the Windows initiated processing, going from the Windows world to the mainframe and then back. While .NET server definition it's the opposite, right? When you have host programs doing work on the Windows environment, which is not really applicable for logic apps. So then we go to .NET Client definition, and then we create one, and then you define an interface. But this is where it gets interesting, right? You have to define, to create a definition of the remote environment that you are going to integrate against. And then you have um, the protocol, TCP, HTTP, or LU62. LU62 is still here, right? Despite the fact that we don't support LU62, which is SNA with logic apps, but we support it with host integration server. So that's why it's still there. So then if we were to take TCP, we have here a few options. We have more than a few, CICS, IMS, and then we have the System I and System I distribute program call, which is the IBM I system. I have to rename this to IBM I. Anyway, so if we take CICS, we have a few options, actually four options: DRM, user data link, user data model. There is the documentation, they do a wonderful work explaining all of these alternatives and the amount of data that they can be exchanged and things like that. If you were to select IMS, you have IMS Connect, right? And then we do create here, right? And then you have the ability to import the host definition, which is a COBOL copybook, or you can create import a library that already exists, or an HIDX file that you may have already designed, right? So then if I import this host definition, I go here to browse, and then I get this IMS get balance program, right? And then this is an IMS program written in COBOL. You will find, what if you have PL1? We had to deal with a customer many years ago that had PL1, and and there is we're working on guidance um, to map PL1 to COBOL, right? So then you can just have a COBOL program. You can convert it to COBOL, right? Because the parsers that we have, we don't really support PL1 in the parser. We thought about that, but when we didn't see a higher influx of customers, we decided to just not do it. But well, we have guidelines to convert it to COBOL, or the mainframe program can easily convert it to COBOL, right? So we go here, and then we decide which one is the input area, which one is the output area. Yes, you require some knowledge to speak with someone who is a bit knowledgeable on these topics, right? Then you have a return value. Then you define a group. Let's say this is a data table. Then the LL fields for uh, for the definition of the copybook, right? And then the ZZ fields, right, for these extra bytes, and then the transaction code, trunk code, we selected here, it's part of the copybook, and then finished. And then all of these copybook that I had, now it got created into this data type, this data definition, right? So it's fairly straightforward, because I told it I instructed to use this structure that's called input area, right, with a couple of values, right? So, but then all of that was incorporated into this when I designed this HIDX file, right? And then that's it, right? So then you can just use this HIDX file in Logic Apps, right? So that's why, I was mentioning, to what is interesting is that dealing with the metadata, then you upload the HIDX file. In this case, will be for the IMS system here, IMS, right? And then you will have a method name here, and then you will have all of these parameters available for you to fill, right? In the case of IMS, that was here, right? So if I see the parameters, I have name, normal, and account number. So then once I pass this information, then it will get executed. Same for CICS, or similar to CICS. CICS and IMS connectors, they they run in a similar manner, right? And also the this is for 3270, to call the 3270 programs, something that I don't think I brought up. So let me show you how the tool looks like. The 3270 design tool is not incorporated in Visual Studio. It's a standalone tool as well, right? So you install it, you download it, and let's say that you create a recording, right? Uh, I open this wrap file. This wrap file has the definition of all of the fields, right, and of all of the screens. And then if I go to the screens, I'll see the result of the execution. And then when I generate the definitions, right, this may likely fail because it's an old definition, um, but it will store an HIDX file that will be available for me to use in Logic Apps, right? So going back to the workflow, um, you have the host files parser, right? That also requires an HIDX definition, but this HIDX definition has to will we have to reflect a host file definition like a VSAM file. Um, so you have to specify a customer record, which is similar to what I just did in the designer, right? And then it will parse the data. So you send the data, it will parse it, and it will bring it in JSON, and then it will bring all of the rows and such, right? We also have the IBM MQ connector, right? And with that, I think I have covered all of them. I'm not going to run it because I ran it last night, and they are still doing maintenance on the CICS and IMS system, right? Let me see. Yeah, it's still in maintenance, but all of these are available for you to use, right? One key thing of these workflows is that uh, typically to integrate with mainframes, you will be needing to provide some secure networking to the mainframe, right? Because this is a secure. It has to be a protected resource. So that in our particular case, we have enabled VNet integration, and we are using ExpressRoute, and we have peered VNet that that secures the communication between between our logic app and the VNet that is linked to this logic app and, and the mainframe. So I think one of the recommendations that I will probably give you is, and I've seen many customers struggling with this, um, despite the fact that you don't have to really set up anything on the mainframe, you have to understand what you have in the mainframe. So this is low code, right? But it still requires some basic level of understanding of the workloads that you're running on the mainframe, the type of protocol. Are they doing transactions or not? What are the ports that are used by the CICS system or by the IMS system, right? So if I go back to the workflow, right, and I try to create here, let's see, designer, I try to create here, uh, let's see here. I go to CICS and call a CICS program, and then I change connection. I'll see I'll add a new connection. So then you have to give a port number, right? And clearly it's not 80, right? So then you need a port number, and this port number has to come um, from the definition, the TCP/IP definition for this for CICS, and this has to come from the mainframe specialist, right? And you have to make sure that that port is accessible from the logic app, because it's not only the VNet, right? You have to test exchanges with the against that particular port, right? And the way how you do that is, I mean, there are many ways to do it. You can do it through advanced tools to Kudu, right, with the TCP ping, right? Or if you go to networking, you can do troubleshooting, and then you can connect here to select. I have connection issues, and then it's gonna tell you, okay, so what are you trying to do, right? I will likely ask you for a TCP/IP for an IP system, right? And then you enter it here, you ping, and then it has to be green. So that's I think that's well, let me just see if I can. Well, anyway, so then you enter here the IP, and then you will be fine with it. Okay, so I think that covers most of what I was planning to show today, right? I invite you to follow me on X or email me if you have questions about this topic. Please add me to LinkedIn and follow me in my and subscribe to my channel. There is a lot of what I try to do in this channel is I try to do a lot to add a lot of um, videos on stuff that is fairly for which there is not a lot of information about, right? I mean, this integration with legacy systems, as I said, unless you do have a REST API that is exposed, which we can call from Logic Apps too, right? So that's definitely something that we can do from our Logic Apps workflow. Unless that is the case, right? Then you will be needing not only taking a look to the docs, but also reviewing, some of the best practices that I can kind of comment in the channel, for dealing with these legacy systems. Um, I hope this session was of your interest. And if you have any questions, please, ping me, send them my way, email me, reach out to me via LinkedIn or via the channel or via X.
Thank you very much. That was good.
Thank
It
you.
brought back a lot of things that I hadn't heard for a while now because I've been kind of out of the mainframe world. But and I did one of the companies I worked for in the U.S. before I moved to Australia. We were doing shipping systems, so we
Oh,
had to
okay. Wow.
interact with a lot of mainframes. And like I can remember doing AS400 connects. And basically, we had a PC that we dropped a
Wow. Wow.
3270 card in, and then wrote stuff in there. It just that everything seems a lot easier now. Where is I know the BizTalk has got some of these features for people that are looking at moving away from BizTalk to Logic Apps. How much of that stuff that they've got in the BizTalk is reusable?
Almost all of it. So I think the only connector or adapter, sorry, the adapter that we have in
Yep,
BizTalk that is fairly unique is the BizTalk adapter for host files. The BizTalk
yep,
adapter for host files, it uses behind the scenes the managed host files provider that I mentioned that leverages the DFM in the host. So it
yep.
actually connects to the host, right, and does work on it, and returns data back, right? With the exception of that capability, um, because we don't really connect with SNA, and BizTalk does, right? BizTalk
Yep.
works against SNA, right? The rest of it, you could just do it in the same manner.
Yep.
The only restriction is just SNA. If it's not SNA, then it can be done pretty much everything.
Yep. Yeah, so because I've got a couple of at least one client that I know is looking at moving from BizTalk to Azure,
Mhm,
and they
mhm.
still have a mainframe in the back end. Um,
If the customer is still running SNA, then well, they can continue using HIS for
yeah,
the SNA gateway. The challenge is that would uh, for them, what we will recommend probably is to look for an alternate solution if they are using host files. But if they are not, then they should
they're
be fine.
using mostly CICS.
Oh, that's fantastic. So then this is just a direct transition.
Yeah,
They can even reuse the HIDX file. I mean, so
yeah.
because they are
Well,
using.
they opted when we put BizTalk in there about 14, 15 years ago. They decided to go with the CICS web services instead of the HIX. So we're talking to the web services.
So,
So
but just as a reminder, right? So I think in the last 10 years, I think time flies. In the last 10 years, we added support for HTTP web services, right? So then you can use our connector, and the HIDX. When I say HIDX, you can create a definition of the metadata, even of the web service. So if you have a whistle or something like that, you can pass it to the HTTP connector. But if you have a definition of fields, you can use our TCP/IP capabilities of the CICS connector, and then just interact with the HTTP programming model. You just change the mode to HTTP, and it will look for the CICS HTTP listener, and it will call the web service.
oh, okay. That's something to think about. Yeah.
That is new. That that well, new in the last 10 years. but it's part of Logic Apps today, right? So we give a lot of alternatives to integrate with legacy systems. Yeah.
Yep. So that's really good because I mean it is a fairly there's not as many of them as there used to be mainframe wise, but there still are the ones, and they're fairly heavily used, and the businesses that use them are depend on them daily.
So what if you allow me to add something, just I know that we are over the hour, but just real quick, right? I think the huge value that I keep discovering in this space is the ability to simplify something that otherwise will be too complex to deal with, managing the metadata, right? I think that aspect of it makes it just where do you want to focus doing the work on? Do you want to focus on the cloud, or spending more cycles on the mainframe and licenses
Yep.
on the mainframe and everything? Where do you want to do it?
Well,
Yeah.
the other thing is that the number of mainframe programmers are going down rapidly.
Exactly, right? So then it's easier for you to find a low-code developer, right? And then give them the principles and give them the right instructions and the right videos. So then
Yep.
they can just do the work on their own, right? With some basic assistance. Interestingly, we have found a good number of customers that are using the connectors that are not HIS customers. So
Yep.
that was a bit of a surprise to our team, to the HIS team. It was like,
Yep.
really? Well, anyway, so that's fantastic.
Yep. Oh, very good. So thank you very much. When I enjoyed that, it brought back a fair few memories for me.
No, thank you, Bill, Dan. Thank you for having me here, and really
Yep.
appreciate you
And
bringing me here.
we'll have this up on our YouTube channel here shortly too, so you can link to that. I'll send you the link through for that. So thank you very much again. And I think that's pretty much, unless we didn't have any other questions, but I know that my customers that's interested in this, they couldn't attend tonight, but they'll watch the video. So they may have some
Fantastic.
questions that I can get you in touch with them over.
Absolutely.
Dan,
No,
any
absolutely.
comments?
No, not for me. Thanks, Harold, for a great presentation.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Bill, for your time. Have a good evening, you both. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care.